May we please invite on stage Mr. Sunil Munjal. Thank you so much, sir. Put your hands together. What happened to you guys? May I also request people who are all standing there, would you like to come and take your seats out here? Everyone who's standing, would you like to please take a seat? Thank you.
I've been asked to talk about the story, the hero story. So I'd like to ask you, what part of the story do you think would be more interest to you? Is it the more current period of what's going on? Or would you be more interested in listening to where it started from, when the bicycle business started in a very different environment in India? Would that be more interesting? Both. Okay. I shall try and cover both. Okay. The story goes back actually before India's independence. Our family was living in Kamalia, which is now, after partition, went off to Pakistan. Like many others, actually millions of others, they moved at the time of partition. They were refugees and they left everything behind. Home, property, assets, business, whatever they had was left behind. And they came literally with the shirts on their backs moved around to different places, went to Agra, Delhi, Panipat, and then finally settled down in Ludhiana. Ludhiana used to have a business, Ludhiana and Malerkotla, two places used to have a business of bicycle parts in those days. And because two of them, my dad and his brother, one of his brothers had actually worked on bicycle parts earlier. They used to trade in some of them in Amritsar. And two of them also had worked in the British Ordnance Factory. And for some strange reason, the British Ordnance Factory used to train people on guns and bicycles. It sounds like Guns N' Roses, and for no reason that I can understand, they used to train them on bicycles. So two of them did know a little bit about bicycles. Actually, they knew a fair bit. So they started trading in bicycle parts, procuring orders and going out and getting the parts from manufacturers and supplying them. So because it was just them and a couple of others working with them, so the family's philosophy became the business philosophy. And it was interesting. Apparently, I'm told they were doing something which was unusual in those days, which was providing service. They would take orders and deliver on time. Which in the India of those days was quite unusual. Not only were they delivering on time, they were making payments on time to their suppliers. And when they went out, they would ask their customers, tell us what you'd like. Tell us what the problems are and what we've supplied. And we will try and fix them next time to give you a product which is more suited for you. So, interestingly, the customers pushed them to do more and more. They said, why don't you, instead of just trading in bicycle pedals, why don't you also trade in handles, and then in bicycle seats. And then they also started to manufacture some of these in Ludhiana. Now, this is in the early 50s. And that was the time, if you remember, that Jawaharlal Nehru was trying to build the industrial base of India. What he had said was that because individuals and Indian companies do not have large resources, because you might remember what happened with the British here, and this is recorded history, when the British came into India at the end of the Mughal period, India had 21% world trade as a single nation. India was truly a global country. And Great Britain, as it was then called, had 1% world trade when they came to India. And in 1947, when they left, they had 21% world trade, and what do you think was left behind? We had 1% world trade. So it was actually an economic subjugation. This is what they did. This is what actually the East India Company did across, not just in India. In many places where they went, they took on the business and they sucked out the value addition back into their own markets. So it was, I think, a very clever thing from their perspective to do, but it hurt the Indian economy very badly. And it took us, of course, a long, long time to recover from there, and even to realize that we need to handle things a little bit differently if we want to get back to where we used to be. Because trade and business is not new for us in India. We're an 8,000-year-old civilization. We actually taught many parts of the world how to do business. And so in 1956, the year when Hero Cycles got its license to make bicycles, was a time when everything was licensed. So the government decided to give 127 licenses in the small scale in one day to companies across India to make bicycles. So our company did something very unusual, or what was certainly not usual in those days, because getting a license in India on those days meant getting a license to make money. A license to do any business was a license to make money. But they went and returned the license. They said, we want a license, but we do not want a restriction of a small scale, because the small scale license had a ceiling of how much you could manufacture or sell or distribute. And you could not do more than that, because if you went beyond that, actually you got punished. So that was very unusual at those times. We were fortunate that we did get another license without the small scale restriction. In 1956, Hero Cycles made 7,500 bicycles in the year. In 1986, it became the world's largest bicycle company. So it took it 30 years to become the world's largest company in the business. But the way that happened was interesting. It was pretty soon after starting the business, they discovered you could not make as many bicycles as you could sell. Because all of the critical components, even for the bicycle in British times, actually came from the UK. They came through what was known as agency houses. So if you got 1,000 rims, for example, you could only make 500 bicycles. If you were lucky, you got 2,000 rims, you made 1,000 bicycles, and that's it. So they said, this won't do. They went around and spoke to family and friends, because they didn't have a lot of money in those days. They, as I said, left everything behind and just started business. So they called family and friends and said, if you would like to do a new business, we can help you set up a business. We can help you select a component, select the machines, help you with the layouts and the process. But there are two things we will not do. We will not fund the business for you, and we will not run the business for you. That's something you have to do yourselves. And also, let's remember that outside of this room, you're my cousin or my nephew or my friend, but inside we are business partners and associates. I don't think they realized at that time they were setting a foundation will grow. What are the new things you will do? So this started off an interesting system that all of these companies have grown month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year, decade on decade, continuously since they were set up. The other part was about the way people were handled. When I said the family philosophy became the business philosophy, the family was fairly religious, and I don't mean in the sense of going to temples, but I mean in terms of value system. So those values became the company's value system, which is how they did business. Now, of course, it's almost written in stone. When a new person joins the company, he or she is told about these in the induction program itself. And the new CEOs, when we hire any senior executives or a CEO, they are told that you can change anything else, but this value system is sacred. Nobody is allowed to touch this. And we've decided for ourselves, it doesn't matter what business we get into, because we now have multiple businesses, that none of these will actually change. And those are, the number one philosophy is around people. That's the only asset we have which appreciates. Every other asset in the company is continuously depreciating. So we're very, very careful with hiring people. We are a very slow organization in terms of hiring. But we have been very fortunate. Most people who joined this company actually retired from here. In fact, until recently, We had no clue what attrition is. We had not seen it until we got into a BPO business in some of these businesses as well. But of course, in recent times, even in the manufacturing business, because of such fantastic opportunities in India, we have had people leave, but very, very few. Most people, when they retire, will then go in and join our either the foundation or the trust. They get involved in other initiatives that we have in education, healthcare, clean drinking water, etc. So it's literally a relationship which is there for life. We have many, many people in the company whose dads or granddads worked in the company. And the same is the case with our suppliers and also our dealers and distributors. So people for us is very, very important. The second is about relationships, making them and retaining relationships. As I said, we already have people whose relationship is continued for 3 generations. And it's also an open secret in the industry that when we buy goods and services, other things being equal, those who do business with us get an automatic preference. So some companies actually get very upset with us, saying, look, we have this new product or new offering. You guys call us for a pitch, but we're unlikely to get the business. So we just tell them, you obviously have to try harder and give us a proposition that we cannot refuse. But frankly, if it's the same, why would we change a supplier at all? Why would we change somebody who's worked with you for so long? The third philosophy or value system is about fairness. The attempt is to be fair to all concerned. Be fair to the people you deal with and be fair to yourselves and the organization. Now, this is very easy, it's like a motherhood statement to make, but sometimes very, very difficult to follow. But if you do follow it, I can tell you, you benefit tremendously from this. The next is around, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I understand a lot of you here are actually from the services area. Can I ask by a show of hands, how many of you from manufacturing companies here? So there are some people, but certainly a smaller number than there are from services. So these are values which are actually universal. And we've attempted this because we've used them across different businesses ourselves, both the manufacturing businesses and also the service businesses. The next value system that we've espoused and we protected fiercely is about the environment. And this is about 2 parts of the environment. One, of course, is the physical environment of communities who live around our plants. So wherever we set up a manufacturing facility, we will get involved in education, healthcare, clean drinking water, access to villages, etc. We work closely with them. And that's something which has helped us build bonds with the communities, which has been very valuable. And second is about the environment in terms of air quality, water quality, effluents, etc. About 40 years ago in Hero Cycles, we set up the first effluent treatment plant because we are doing plating and painting, so you use acid and all kinds of effluents get discharged. And that was a time when it was neither mandatory nor fashionable, and nor did the technology exist. It was interesting. They had to sit down with technologists and design a plant. You had to figure out how do you actually do this so that it will work. So they are in this manner, and I just wanted to repeat that while these sound like motherhood statements, but the reality is the beneficial fallout of this is absolutely phenomenal if you do follow them. So we were fortunate that in the early 80s, the government of India opened a window for foreign collaborations to come in for 2-wheelers for a very short time. And many of the big major companies, as you know, especially the Japanese came in here. All of them did come in here. Honda was approached by 140 companies from India for a potential partnership, because even at that point in time, they were a global leader. So we were fortunate to be shortlisted amongst the 20 amongst the 140, and they spent 2 years meeting those companies to select their final partner in India. So when they did select us, we actually asked them this question, why they would pick a company like ours. Because in the last 20, we were probably one of the, if not the smallest, we must have been one of the smallest companies of those 20 at that time. They had spent 2 years visiting our plants, visiting us repeatedly, and in the very typical efficient Japanese style. In those days, they didn't have laptops, so they would come with cameras and notebooks. They kept noting all kinds of stuff. So we said, you probably know more about us than we know ourselves. And interestingly, that turned out to be true. Because they gave us some insights about our business that we had no clue about. So they said, the reason we partnered with you is, one, we don't necessarily care about the size of the company. We care about the potential of the company. We believe you people have shown the ability to grow, and we think you will have the ability to continue to grow this business and help us make a significant impact here. The second thing they said was, we like the way you treat your people. Because if you remember, Japan used to have the same system at that time of lifetime employment. And they said, we've been around to many companies in India. We've not seen this kind of interaction between the people in the companies. And the third thing they said was, we like the way you treat your suppliers. Because this kind of relationship with suppliers was very common in Japan, but completely uncommon in the rest of the world. And they also said that every time we come back, we find you, in a sense, reinvented yourself. Something has changed inside your plants, either a machine layout or a process, or something has changed each time. And that's something we like, because it shows the ability to constantly look for new answers. They also gave us a figure which we had no clue about. They said your productivity is about the highest levels in the world. And frankly, we had no clue about this. We didn't know. All we did was, and this is again a cultural thing, we used to ask everybody in the company to do more this year than he or she did last year. And we are a very, very numbers-driven organization. The more this year meant that number, it used to get marked as a number, and the year would get broken up into quarters and into months, into weeks, etc. And the monitoring was done every 30 minutes. In those days, of course, there were no large electronic systems, although we had actually, interestingly, put in a system in Hero Cycles in those days. Our production lines for each component are like independent factories. We have a production line for saddles and handles and pedals, etc. The supervisor of each line is responsible, almost like a factory manager, for everything that goes on that line. Every 30 minutes on the old blackboards with chalk, you used to write what's going on in terms of numbers. What was the target? What did they produce? How much was the rejection? Are they on or off target? Are the people, are all the people present or not present? So all of that information was available on blackboards to anybody walking into the factory all the time. And the idea was, the more information you share, the more you seem to benefit. And by the way, this was completely counterintuitive. Many of you are young people, so you may not know this. But in the India of the old days, people believed that power came from holding on to information, not from sharing information. The information used to be hidden by any manager who had information, used to consider himself or herself very powerful manager because they had the information. And we found the reverse was actually true. The more information you shared, the more powerful the entire system became. The more responsive they became. The more responsible they became. So we've continued. We were fortunate when Honda came in, we set up the two-wheeler business. We were the last of the 4 major companies to come into the business. And we were lucky that this company saw very good growth even in the early days. What it did do was continue the same philosophy as we had in our companies before this. And interestingly, Honda's philosophy was very, very simple. In fact, we looked at the chairman's statement of Soichiro Honda and our chairman's statement in that year, and we didn't know we were going to partner with each other. They were almost word-to-word identical about what the company would like to do and what it would like to see happen. So it was quite coincidental, but it was quite revealing about the two organizations. So this partnership created something quite unique in the sense that under the ARAI testing, as you know, when you bring a new automotive product, you have to get it tested here in Pune in a lab. The motorcycle was tested for 94 kilometers a liter. And we put out an ad. We designed an ad which said you will get at least 70 kilometers a liter. Our sales guys got very upset He said, why would you say 70 when you actually passed for 94? He said, because currently people are getting 15, 18 or 20. And if you say 70, you will certainly deliver 70. That's another value system, by the way, in the company, is to make commitments where you have a demonstrated capability yourselves or the ability to be able to deliver at least as much as your promise. So if you deliver more than your promise, you are seen as a more reliable organization. And we've seen that happen with us over many, many years. So that actually completely changed the way people looked at motorcycles. If you remember, we used to be a scooter country in those days. Not only were we a scooter country, you used to have to wait 12, 13, 14 years after giving a full deposit to get a scooter. So not only was a product available which changed the way consumption would take place, it actually changed many other things. It changed the way you actually approach this product itself. It changed people's lifestyles. It changed the ability to travel. Because in those days, if you wanted to travel out of town, you had to prepare your car or your two-wheeler for a few days. It had to go to the workshop, etc. And here was a product you just kickstart and you're off. You could go to office, or you could go to the next town, or you could go traveling for a week. It didn't matter which. And it also changed the concept. People have often asked us this question, why did people switch from scooters to motorcycles? And I'm not sure how many of you wonder about this, but it's something which happened very quietly, but very quickly at that time. And the reason was, I believe, that people used to buy scooters because scooter was considered a family vehicle. That you can sit yourself, you can have your wife sit with you, and a kid in the front, sometimes a kid at the back, and one more in the front as well. And plus, it had a spare wheel at the back, so in case you had a flat somewhere, you could just stop the scooter and change the spare. And it was also considered safer. Now, what happened with the new motorcycles was, and it was not only ours, it was all of the new ones which came. They had far superior technology and design, which was built into not only the tire, the rim design, and the braking design. So they became much safer. Also, if in the old days, seeing somebody dragging a motorcycle which was flat was pretty common. I'm not sure when any of you have seen that last. It doesn't happen so often now because there is a dramatic improvement, of course, in roads as well, but also in the product itself. So the need for the spare wheel went away. And the sheer compulsion, economic compulsion of the cost of ownership, which these products provided to the consumer, completely changed their equation of how they looked at this product. How much time do I have? 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. I'm going to stop here and basically just to say that what we've seen is each time you produce a manufacturing job, you end up producing 3 to 4 services jobs. I'm not sure the linkage is clear even to the market right now. But whenever we put up a manufacturing plant, we obviously need hundreds of services around us. When we set up this plant in Haridwar that I talked of earlier in the morning, 230 companies have gone with us to set up their plants. These are our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers. Each one of them will have services required for them, insurance services, travel services, packaging services, transport services, all kinds of things which go around these companies. And those are essentially required to make this work, which is why for a country like ours, it is absolutely critical that we don't focus only on building the services, which we must, by the way. We must build the services because we are now increasingly seen as a world leader in many services. But it's absolutely imperative that we also build our manufacturing base. The 10 to 14 million people which are going to come into the job market every year need to be trained, educated, and skilled. When we hire people, for example, we don't look at too much. We don't look at background and caste, etc., which the government is saying you must reserve or you must look at. We actually don't look at. We don't even know what background people come from. All we want to know is your attitude and your skill level. The skill for us is very easy to change. We can train people. The attitude is much tougher. That can be changed too. It takes a lot more. But I think it's important for all of us as a nation to sit back and see what will it take for us to actually take manufacturing to 25% of the GDP right now. We are the world's highest manufacturing taxed country. So we are not doing a lot actually to encourage manufacturing besides talking about it and besides saying we want to do it. We also have the worst system of a common market. We are one country, but we are not one market. If you send goods from Delhi to Mumbai, for example, a truck has to stop at every single state border. It gets checked. It pays local taxes. So we are not one market at all. So it's absolutely essential for us that we bring in GST. There is a set of reforms required. There's a set of training requirements for industry which we have to put in place. If we are to be the kind of country that we want to be, as I said earlier, I'm absolutely optimistic about India and where it's going. I am, however, seriously concerned about this time we are taking and about how we are doing this. Because we are the world's truest democracy. As I say, every Indian has an opinion. Actually, most Indians have two opinions. And none of us is shy of airing our opinion either. So we love this noise. That is our big strength. It's also our biggest challenge. Our extreme diversity as a nation. When we travel, our clothes, our language, our food, we even look different. So truly, we are continental, and that is our big strength. Many look at this as weakness, but that's a big strength. I believe we are at a point from which, if of course we do all the right stuff, we can only get better, bigger, and we don't necessarily need to be the largest economy in the world. We just need to be the best place to live in. Thank you very much.